contrast to, say, dentistry or housekeeping, ministry is one of those vocations that other people tend to have strong opinions about. When someone finds out that I'm a minister, they usually react in one of a few typical ways. Sometimes they press me to find out if I'm the right kind of minister, which is to say, a minister in their own religious tradition. They ask theological questions or make theological statements to see if I'll agree. You're a minister? Well, praise the Lord. I think we need all the help we can get to rescue people from Satan. That is a quote. Meaning also, I assume, you're a minister? I can't quite picture it. The tattooed ministers of biker groups get a similar reaction. Apparently, a young woman and a Harley dude are equally unconventional pastors. Another possible reaction is silence. The answer, I'm a minister, can be a conversation stopper. Once or twice it happened that the inquisitor did not believe in ordaining women and didn't have anything else to say. Other times I get the sense the person is afraid that I'll start talking religion to them, and they retreat. I totally understand. The third possibility is the least stressful one, which is something like, really? Cool. My sister-in-law is a minister. Oh, hey, I see you have a copy of Gone Girl. Did you get to the plot twist? But Lillian Daniel experienced a fourth kind of reaction, a situation which presents an opportunity, but which, I'll admit, can be tiresome. When the person sitting next to her on the plane heard that she is a minister, he took that opportunity to launch into a long explanation about why he doesn't go to church. It contained unfortunate but common elements, such as he realized the church of his youth did not leave room for his questions or was hypocritical. Now, he said, his religion is reading the New York Times and running through the woods. He is spiritual but not religious. Personally, I am fine with people who don't go to church. I mean, how many of you have experienced a phase in your life when you didn't go to church for a while? Right? I think everybody. Me too. Me too. Maybe it lasted a few years for you, or maybe it lasted decades. Maybe today is your first day back, or your first day ever in church. If that is the case, then blessings be upon you. I hope you find what you are seeking. I don't know any ministers who are offended by non-churchgoers. It's fine, really. But Lillian Daniel pricked up her ears at the phrase, spiritual but not religious, because the way the guy said it, he seemed to be closing the door on church forever. And it occurred to her, he must not know what he's missing. The finality with which he wrote church off after a few disappointing experiences revealed to her that he must not know what church is for. It's not his fault. If the churches he experienced conducted their affairs as though they were primarily concerned with getting people to accept a certain set of ancient claims about Jesus and following select rules from another culture in another millennium, then I can see how finding God in the sunset or forest or food for thought in the New York Times would be a huge improvement, much more relevant to his life. But Daniel was critical. Doesn't that seem just too convenient, she wondered. She wondered how helpful God in the sunset would be for someone facing cancer. She shared the story of another spiritual but not religious evangelist who told her proudly that his family's religion was simply gratitude. His son, he said, blew everyone away by saying he felt really lucky to live in a place where he had enough to eat, while in other parts of the world people starved. Daniel was incredulous. Really? She asks. That's it? I'm glad I'm here and not there? That's your religion? She goes on for a while. It was, as I said, a missive in which she pretty much lambasts spiritual but not religious folks for choosing a path that seems too easy and not very deep. Now, I don't totally agree with her. I don't think you have to go to church necessarily to develop a deep spirituality. But I do think you have to be in community with other people, deeply, thoughtfully, in ways that a good church is designed to encourage and promote. Sunsets and forests are spiritual things, and they're part of my spiritual practice too. But they wouldn't be enough on their own. Because when you come down off the mountain, or come away from the river, or out of the woods, you are surrounded by the whole rest of the world. And some of it is pretty ugly. And some of it is soul-crushing. There were many possible titles for this sermon. What is church for? What are you doing here? What's this all about? What's with that new building? Or even ecclesia. More on that one later. Our church does a lot of things. If you dropped in on this church on a Tuesday evening and you didn't know better, you might think church is for business meetings. On a Monday or Wednesday afternoon, you might think it exists to tutor children or hand out free food. On Wednesday evenings, to bring people together over a meal or plot ways to make the world more just and sustainable. On Thursdays, to teach English or try out folk dancing. On Sundays, for music, ritual, and reflection. But none of these is what church is for. It's only when you perceive the way all these parts come together that you grasp what the church is really for, which is not any one of these things specifically, but what is happening through them. The theologian Rebecca Parker writes that progressive religion, that's us, makes three standout claims about religious congregational life, about what happens through those things we do together. And those are what I want to tell you about this morning because they're bold. And we're poised to share them with more people than ever in our big new sanctuary building. Three claims. The first is that congregations are for covenants or promises. The second, that congregations are for resistance, inside and outside of ourselves. And the third is that congregations are for grounding life in shared rituals, and that those rituals help us live courageous and meaningful lives. Church is for covenant. A covenant is a promise. Our church, this church, is covenantal instead of creedal. That means that instead of making rules about what we should all believe, we make promises about how we'll all be together in such a way as to not only nourish our own spiritual lives, but the soul of the larger community around us. Because we know that what we do here matters. We take it with us when we leave, and it has a wider impact on the soul of the community and even on the soul of the world. Our promises are extravagant. We promise that we will care for the web of life, even though we live at this place and this time in history, when the very things we need to do to live, eat, use water, wear clothing, move from place to place, are bound up in systems and practices that damage the web. We promise to work toward a world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. But that's hard work. Sometimes working for justice disturbs the peace. Sometimes liberty seems to be at odds with justice, such as when people use their right to free speech to say things that reinforce the oppression of others. We promise to uphold the democratic process, even when it does not lead to the outcome we desire. If you've ever had strong feelings against one of our country's presidents or other politicians, you know the internal struggle democracy entails. We promise to engage in a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. We promise to accept one another, even when we are confounded by each other's behavior. And we promise to encourage each other's spiritual growth. We promise to practice and promote justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. And we promise to honor the inherent worth and dignity of all people, all the people in this church, all passersby, all strangers, all political leaders, all criminals, all obnoxious or beautiful or curmudgeonly or snobby or downtrodden people, all people. These, my friends, are extravagant promises. How can we live up to them? But that's the point. All good promises are extravagant ones because humans are prone to error. Every once in a while, I meet with someone who's angry because some part of the church is falling short of its values or goals. To which I say, yes, we need to remedy that. Let's plan together. But also, falling short is not a sign of failure. In fact, it's kind of the point. We are going to fall short, inside of the church and out of it, short of our own goals, short of what we know is morally right, short of doing enough to address injustice in the world and help others. The difference is that in the church, we call each other and ourselves to heal, to grow, to go deeper, and to try again. Does hypocrisy happen in churches? You betcha. It happens outside of churches too. It happens everywhere people go. It's just that if they haven't stood up and made an extravagant promise about it, no one notices their hypocrisy and calls them on it. In church, we're willing to be called on the carpet because we believe the promises are worth striving for openly and are important. And we put our ideals into practice. It's one thing to say that we are all imperfect humans and that we will practice compassion. It's another to actually bring forth that compassion when someone is being an imperfect human at you. In church, though, we practice that. We do our best. We reconcile and forgive and cheer each other on. I have seen some wonderful examples of this in the course of our building project. The project is complex, with so many moving pieces. There are overlapping or even competing needs. There are passions involved, and sometimes it has been stressful for volunteers and staff alike. But throughout the project and all of its bumps, I've seen people return again and again to compassion and mutual respect. I'm so proud of us. Not for being perfect, we can't do that, but for remembering over again why we are together in the first place and the promises we make. The theologian Martin Buber says that Homo sapiens is probably not the right name for humans. We are not always wise or self-aware, which is what those Latin words mean. Instead, he says, we are the promise-making, promise-breaking, promise-renewing animal. Church is for covenant, for promises. And church is for resistance, inside and outside of ourselves. These walls, and the walls in our new sanctuary, are sheltering walls. They're meant to keep hate out and hold love in. This roof and the roof above our new sanctuary creates a place of refuge, a place where we take refuge from harm. What kind of harm? The kind that occurs in that rest of the world that we come down to when we come off the mountain or out of the woods. That's a world in which some people are treated as less worthy than others, in which physical ability and appearance are ranked above heart and mind, in which social status determines interpersonal connections or leads to rejection, and there is pressure to always do more, buy more, succeed more, in which we internalize negative messages about what we are good enough for, or capable of, or worth, about whether there is hope for us when we have failed so many times, about who we should love or how we should dress. Under this roof, you can take refuge. You can remember, I want you to remember, that you are a beloved child of this universe, child of God. Your whole amazing body is made of stardust, light, and soil. You are precious, redeemable, and worthy. That may be countercultural, but it's true. When you remember it, it is resistance. Resistance within yourself to that which would diminish you. Churches are also places where we are capable of larger, effective, outward kinds of resistance because we're not alone. The civil rights movement was a powerful example of that. It gathered its power up in black churches across the South and spilled into the streets and right up to the nation's capital. Churches were also places of resistance to slavery, and not just in black churches, but in many white congregations too. Last year, our congregation organized in response to the nation's crackdown on immigrants, which we saw was increasing suffering without fixing the broken system. We traveled to the state capitol multiple times. We sent a delegation with supplies on a learning and service trip to the border, and we participated in our denomination's mass protest in Arizona at Sheriff Joe Arpaio's sweltering prison known as Tent City. We do these things because ours is a hopeful faith, one that does not stay under the refuge of its roof. It's a place where we not only offer refuge, but find healing, purpose, and strength in letting the hope we grow here spill out into the world, out of the doors by way of our feet, hands, hearts, and voices. What kind of person do you want to be? What does your heart require of you? Now that we have more space for teaching and organizing, for prayer and meditation and gathering up our strength, what will we dream of that we have not yet imagined? What hope will burst out at the seams of our new building and travel with us into the world? How will we wield our numbers, over 1,000 members and friends when you count them all up, to bring about some of the healing that our world so desperately needs? Churches are for resistance. To resist is to demonstrate strength and resilience, and is to put hope into action. But in order for us to draw more power from resistance, in order for it to feed us and not become another demand on us, we need to nurture our spirits in other ways too. We need the soul food of shared ritual, the third thing progressive religion offers. The private lighting of a candle, time spent in meditation and prayer, ritual words of blessing, like peace be with you, lifting our voices together in song, the blessing and dedication of young children, celebrations of marriage, memorial services, affirmation, poetry, or prayer at your hospital bedside. These are touchstones in the life of the church, essential rhythms of our time together. Through them, we turn our attention to what is sacred. We step out of ordinary time. We recall what is essential. Rituals can help carry us through times when we feel lost, like a drumbeat followed through the forest. They can soothe the weary soul or open up moments of healing. A bit of clay smudged on your forehead. What a funny thing to contemplate. But in the context of ritual 2 months ago, it represented the elements within you and how blessed you are, you creature fashioned from clay. How deeply moving to say and experience these things together. That's what church is for. And by turning our attention to what is sacred, ritual changes the way we see the rest of the world. It helps us develop what the theologian Howard Thurman calls quiet eyes. You don't need 20/20 vision to develop your quiet eyes. It isn't about three-dimensional objects. It's about perception, seeing with your mind, your heart, your being, seeing with a deep certainty that though life storms and people cause harm, we're not alone. There is no place where love cannot reach us, and no place our love cannot reach. Church is for calling us out of the little bubbles we make around ourselves to see what we are part of, who we really are, who we belong to, and what is meaningful. In Traveling Mercies, the writer Anne Lamott offers this explanation for why she makes her son go to church with her. The main reason, she writes, is that I want to give him what I found in the world, which is to say, a path and a little light to see by. Most of the people I know who have what I want, which is to say, purpose, heart, balance, gratitude, joy, are people with a deep sense of spirituality. They are people in community who pray or practice their faith. They are Buddhists, Jews, Christians, people banding together to work on themselves and for human rights. They follow a brighter light than the glimmer of their own candle. They are part of something beautiful. I like that. They are part of something beautiful. So are you. And now we have built something beautiful together, a beautiful new space to gather and ritualize, to practice, plot, and plan out these things that our church is for. A welcoming space with room for more people to come in, wherever they come from, wherever they are at in their spiritual journey, and also be part of a beautiful thing. Please rise in body or in spirit for our closing hymn, For All That Is Our